For 2 months straight, I've been locked into the most extensive bike build I have ever attempted. I removed every single part on the bike, went all in on restoring this insane looking chromoly frame, went to the biggest bike swap on the East Coast to farm some parts, and I rebuilt a 33-year-old steel mountain bike that I now know inside and out. This is the bike, a 1992 GT Avalanche I found on Facebook Marketplace. It was 8 p.m. on a Wednesday evening when this bike came across my feed. I was instantly drawn to the skinny steel tubing and the one-of-a-kind paint scheme. I met up with the seller at his house at 9 o'clock at night. Super sketchy. He said a few people had already come to check it out, but he didn't want to sell it to them since they just wanted to flip it for a profit. I told him that I wanted to restore the bike and actually ride it, so he sold it to me. I think he was happy it was going to a good home, and I was happy to come home with a new project. So unfortunately, there were some issues with the bike. I noticed the seat post collar wasn't working at all. It literally wouldn't even clamp onto the seat post. So when I took the seat post out, I noticed there was a lot of scratching and rust. So we're definitely gonna have to replace the seat post collar. The only other super obvious thing that needs replaced is the rear mech grip shifter. So it's super gunked up and kind of has tar all over it. I probably touched it 20 times when I first started handling the bike, and I would get gunky stuff all over my hands and have to go wash my hands. So obviously that needs replaced. All in all, most of the parts on this bike were in really good shape, but we do end up replacing a lot of the parts on this bike and swapping them out for some cooler parts. So if you're somebody that's super familiar with our channel, you know we typically work on modern mountain bikes. The only other vintage mountain bike that we featured on this channel was my 1980s Kuwahara Puma. Now that bike turned out super cool, but it was definitely more of a superficial build. We didn't tear everything down to the frame. We didn't really restore the frame or do anything that was as in-depth as we're doing with this GT. Tearing the bike down to its frame and taking all the parts off, cleaning everything, is not only very therapeutic and really fun to do, but it just gives you a good idea of all the different nooks and crannies on the bike and just gives you a deeper connection to the bike itself. If you've ever thought about taking a bike completely apart and starting from scratch, I definitely recommend it. And with these vintage bikes, it's actually a lot easier than you might think. I'd have to say that 90% of the parts go back together the same way that you take them apart. So if you pay close attention when disassembling everything, it's pretty easy to know how to put everything back together. Everything was going pretty smoothly until I got to this grip shifter. I tried to remove the bolt, and when I did, the head of the bolt actually snapped off, so there was no way to take out the rest of the bolt that was stuck inside of the grip shifter. So I ended up having to try to drill it out. That was kind of my first attempt, and it really didn't work because my drill bit was just super dull. So then I ended up just hammering it off the end, and it worked pretty good. I'm gonna replace this grip shifter and these handlebars, so it's not really that big of a deal. This is just a little trick for removing super tight brake levers. If you stick a little wedge in between the clamp, it kind of opens the clamp up a little bit and it's easier to get off the brake lever. Here I'm using a little spacer sort of bleed block thing from my SRAM bleed kit, but you can also use a tire lever as well. Just anything that's kind of pointy at the end and widens out that you can shove in there to sort of space out the clamp. Here I didn't really need it because it wasn't super tight on the left side, but this also works for putting back on the brake levers as well when the clamps are super tight, and it can save you from scratching up your handlebars. This GT stem was super sick, and I wish I could have used this for the build, but it just doesn't really fit the vibe and the aesthetic that I'm going for with this build. So maybe we'll save it for another project in the future, but definitely getting rid of these handlebars. They're super rusted. We got done taking off all of the easy to remove parts, and now it was time to get into the parts that can be a little bit more of a pain in the ass to remove if things don't go well, and that's the cranks, bottom bracket, and headset. These are the parts that can typically give you some trouble if they have not been removed for years, which I know for a fact that these parts have not been removed for probably about 20 years. So there was a lot of potential for rust. There's a lot of potential for these parts to be seized. So I was equally excited and nervous. But I was super stoked to see that the drive side crank arm came off super easily. I got my crank puller in there and it popped right off. I expected the non-drive side to come off just as easily, but I ran into a huge issue with this dust cover. I don't have the actual tool to remove this dust cover properly, so I just used a poker and an Allen key to try to spin it off, but it was just not working. I don't know if the dust cover got hit by a rock and smashed in, but it would not turn, so I just basically had to try to pry it off piece by piece. This was super annoying and probably took about 20 minutes to do, and in the process I ended up actually cutting myself, which really sucked, but eventually I was able to get the entire dust cover out of there bit by bit, and then it was super easy to remove the crank arm. Now it was time to remove the front and rear brake calipers. I knew this was going to be a tricky part for me to put back together, so I tried to keep all the bolts and washers in the right order that I took them apart in. That way it would be a little bit easier to put everything back together. So here's where I did something kind of stupid. The fork was pretty seized in the headset, so I got the idea to take out a mallet and start hammering it down through the headset. And this wasn't the stupid part. The stupid part is when I ran out of steer to hammer on top of, I actually took the top cap bolt and stuck it into the star nut and then started hammering on top of the top cap bolt because I thought that that would give me a little bit more kind of oomph to get it going down and through the headset. And it actually ended up working, but since the top cap and star nut are such a vulnerable piece on the fork, they actually bent a little bit. I was luckily able to use a mallet to straighten it out, but yeah, I definitely don't recommend doing that. The bottom bracket came out super easily. I did have to have Katie's help holding the frame while I really torqued on it to get it out, but it really came out relatively easily. And then the last thing to do was removing the press fit headset cups. So that came out super easily as well. I got a brand spanking new tool for that and it works super awesome. So now everything was pretty much stripped off of the bike and I was ready to start restoring the frame and then polishing the paint. These are the 4 products I use to mitigate and prevent rust and bring the paint back to life on a steel frame. WD-40 to remove stickers, grease, and to remove surface rust. Rust Reformer to convert rusted spots on the outside of the frame to a neutral flat black paintable surface. T9 to prevent future rust on the inside of the frame. And finally, I bring the paint back to life with some T-Cut. The links to all these products are in the video description, and I actually just made an in-depth video where I discuss why and how I use all 4 of these products. It'll be linked at the end of this video. Just as I was finishing up the frame, the first new part for the GT build came in the mail. Super sick. The first piece of the GT puzzle. Very dope, dude. So I had a table full of dirt nasty parts that desperately needed cleaned before I put them back on the bike. So I ended up buying this product called MO94 that I've never used before that supposedly is a great degreaser and lubricant. This product is a little bit different than WD-40 because WD-40 is a great degreaser, but it doesn't do a great job relubricating the parts after they're cleaned. MO94 not only cleans the parts, but leaves a protective film to protect the parts from flash rusting in the future. But before we can test out the MO94, we have one more thing to attend to. So I need to take the cassette off of this wheel, but when you try to take it off, it just completely spins. So I need something to hold this cassette. So I'm going to show you how to make a homemade chain whip. And it's pretty easy to do. All you need is a piece of wood like this. you need a saw, like a circular saw, and then you need an old chain, and then the optional duct tape. Not really optional, but optional safety glasses. So let me show you how you do it. So let's set this aside. So the first thing you're going to do is cut a little groove into the end of your board here. Get to use my new saw. So as you can see, it's pretty crudely done, but it's just enough that the chain can basically have a little channel here to sit inside of. And then we're just going to shorten it up a little bit as well. All right, so that's about a foot long now. Okay, so you want to get the top part on the biggest cog, and then pull it taut around here, and then take this extra bit here and wrap it around the second biggest cog. And then there can be like extra slack here too. This part doesn't really matter because most of the tension's on here and here. So let's go ahead and give it a try now and see if it works. Nice, it works. Cool. And now we're able to take our cassette apart and clean it. All right, so the gang's all here. Got a lot of cleaning to do. Let's get to it. So I ended up having to take the brake calipers apart even further to clean everything thoroughly. So I ended up taking a string and kind of tying everything together so that all the correct parts would stay with the correct caliper. It'll just make it a little bit easier when putting everything back together. I also did this with the headset as well. And then I took all of the small bolts and just put them in a little cup. I'm going to clean them with some vinegar later as well. It just makes it a little bit easier rather than trying to scrub every single little bolt. The cassette is cleaning up super nice. I would say the Makeover MO94 works. Looking pretty good. So Katie and I are down in Maryland right now. We're headed to the Stop, Swap, and Save. So we're literally 5 minutes away from it right now. We're looking for some parts for the GT build. Most importantly, I'm looking for a BMX top load stem. I'm also maybe looking for a fork, and I have a list of a couple other things as well. So we're gonna kind of see if this is worth going to and see if I can actually get some parts for a really good deal. Most of the stuff here is gonna be used or stuff that they're trying to move really fast. So I'm hoping to get some sweet deals. We're gonna put a little checklist up on the screen, and at the end of it, we'll see how many of these things we end up finding.
Like, stamp you like, oh no, it's like, oh, stamp it again. Like, okay, let me lift up my sleeve, I'll stamp it here.
Are you lost, sir? Need it too,
Perfect.
so
That's why we brought it.
hell yeah, man. Appreciate you. So this place is super sick. It's like so overwhelming because there's just so much to look at. I got my list here. So far we got 2 things. We got this stem and we got this race-based chain ring. I wanted this exact chain ring, so this was pretty sick that I ended up getting this. 38 tooth, 110 BCD. So yeah, super stoked on that. I got some stickers as well. So let's keep hunting and see what we can find. It is super cool.
That's a 9-speed. $25.
25? Yeah. All right, I'll take it for 25. Let's do it.
Some of the prices are 5 because I don't have any.
Yo, just picked up this Marzocchi bomber fork for $25. So it looks super sick. Gonna match the Avalanche, super nice. Super stoked. $10? All right, yeah, let's do it. That'd be perfect. You mind holding this, babe? Got a lot of stuff now. So we only got one more thing that we're looking for. We're just looking for the seat collar. So it's a very specific size, but we're gonna try to hunt one down. We found one for 30 bucks, but that's a little bit too steep for what we're trying to spend. So let's see if we can find it. Super dope. $3?
Yep.
All right, let's do it.
All right.
Perfect, man. That's the last thing on my list, pretty much. So, yeah. All right, we got the last part. We need 29.8 seat collar. I like this one. It's very like small and minimalist. Very nice. Yeah. How you feeling? Long day. I just have to talk about what we just experienced at the stop, swap, and save. Hold on, there's a car. I'm gonna go around. We're driving home right now, obviously. But man, it was so amazing. Like, I literally told Katie that it was probably one of my most fun days I've ever had revolving around bikes, because it was just totally different than anything else I've ever experienced. It is so insane because never in my life have I just bought so many bike parts all at once and got such good deals on them. It was seriously incredible. It was amazing. I was like a kid in a candy shop almost, is what it felt like. The prices on things were absolutely insane. And the stuff I got was really, really cool. It was stuff that I actually genuinely wanted, and not just stuff that, well, some of the things were just kind of random things that were such a good deal that I just couldn't pass up on. But some of the things I genuinely wanted so bad and would have paid, 3, 4, 5 times as much for. So it was just super insane. The place was way bigger than I thought, and I literally got everything I could have ever wanted. So I would say that it was absolutely worth going to. Okay, so now that we're back home from the stop, swap, and save, let's go over all the parts we got. So I wasn't expecting to get a green stem, but I saw this Hoffman bike stem and thought it was super cool, so I just had to grab that. I got a couple different water bottle cages. So I got this specialized one, which is I think called a V cage, which is the same one I have on my 5010. Really nice cage, and it was only $1. so you can't really beat that. I also got this super sick metal Bontrager cage, and I obviously just got it because it's pink and I just really think it's a kind of a cool color. I don't know if this is something that I'm gonna put on the Avalanche, but I just thought it was super cool and wanted to pick it up. They were giving away these free Velo Orange stickers, which is super cool. I so badly want a Velo Orange Neutrino Mini Velo, so I was super stoked to grab these stickers. They're awesome. I got this seat post collar, and I was a little disappointed when I looked at it closer because it doesn't have like the top ridge for where it sits flush on top of the seat tube, so I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to use this or not, but it was only $3, so it's really not too big of a deal. And then I got this whole situation of brake levers and shifters. It's a 7-speed and a 3-speed shifter, and then it has V-brake levers. I just kind of grabbed them because it was a really good deal, and I knew that I needed a 7-speed shifter. So I picked these up. There's a little bit of rust on some of the metal parts there where the thumb shifter is, but I feel like I should be able to clean that up pretty good. And they seem like pretty decent kind of all together shifters and brakes, so we'll see what ends up happening with these. I'll probably use it for at least the rear of the bike. One thing that I was super stoked to find was this race face chainring, and it's the exact size I needed. It's a 38-2, so I feel like it's going to be the perfect gear ratio for the type of riding I'm going to do on this bike, which is mostly flat rail trail stuff, so I feel like this will be fast enough. And Katie also has a 38 on her rail trail bike, so we'll be kind of equal in that regard. And I just think these chain rings from Race Face will just look super sick with this kind of race face scheme on the front. Now, this seat post was one of the last things I grabbed for, I think, $2 right before the Stop, Swap, and Save was over. And I'm not really sure about it. I honestly think it's pretty hideous, but I just really needed a seat post because the one I took off the GT was super rusted and just all messed up because of that stupid seat clamp. So this will have to work for now, but I would love to just get a more simple seat post in the future. So this Marzocchi bomber fork was a pretty interesting find. I wasn't really expecting to come home with another suspension fork. I was actually looking for a rigid fork for this bike, but I couldn't find any that were really compatible with the GT. So I ended up just going with this one because it seemed like a pretty good deal. I only paid $25 for this, and upon closer inspection, it's more of an XC Marzocchi bomber fork, so it's still pretty cool, and I really like the black stanchions, but I might not be using it on this bike because after holding it up next to the GT, I realized it's kind of an off-white pearly color, whereas the GT is more of like a true white color, so it didn't really match as well as I hoped it would. But I might just end up using the RockShox Judy that came with the GT. But at the end of the day, I'm super stoked with everything that I got from the Stop, Swap, and Save. What do you think of that fork, Olive? So there were a few last minute things I had to do before we could start building the bike. I ordered a 9-speed chain because I read online that that's the best chain to use for a 1x7 setup with a narrow wide chain ring. I finally got around to cleaning up the bolts with some vinegar, and this is a great time to subscribe if you haven't already done that. Yes, I know I wrote subscribe on the side of the bottle. I've been a YouTuber for like 7 years and I still don't know how to spell subscribe apparently. I decided to take the stickers off the RockShox Judy so that it would match the Avalanche, and I made an attempt to save this bottom bracket. That's not really doing anything. So I'm just gonna spray some rust reformer on it and just use it for now. It totally works fine on the inside. It's literally just the outside, so it is what it is. It's just not gonna look pretty. Alright, so this is our rust restored bottom bracket here. So it's looking pretty good. Let's throw it in and see if it goes in smoothly and works well. So give it a little test here. So this was about the biggest waste of 20 minutes of my entire life. I tried to take the old broken seat post collar from the GT and just make it work with a couple random bolts I found in my parts bin and put it on the GT so that I could start working on everything by hanging the bike by its seat post. It took me forever to kind of get it set up, and you wouldn't believe how hard it is to actually adjust the seat post collar when you don't have a quick release or a proper bolt to adjust it by. The seat kept sliding down and I kept trying to tighten it, and it was just such a waste of time and so stupid. I thought that this might be a more permanent solution, but as soon as I was done putting this on, I went and ordered a proper seat post collar on Amazon, so this will get us by for now. Well, it works fine if you never plan to adjust the height of your seat post. Man, this is crazy. I was super excited to install this race face chainring on the cranks. I decided to install it on the inside of the cranks because I felt like that was going to optimize the chain line. If we ever end up replacing the bottom bracket, I can get a shorter bottom bracket axle length and then maybe we can mount it on the outside, but I feel like it actually looks really good on the inside as well. I had some extra chainring bolts laying around that I really hoped would work for this combination, and it actually ended up working perfectly. Sometimes the spacing is a little bit off and they don't work and you have to order specialty ones, but the old ones actually ended up working perfectly, so I was stoked to be able to continue the build. Sick. So we had a whole week of completely no progress because I was waiting for a headset to come in the mail from Amazon. I ordered an Origin 8 Pro headset, which seemed like a really good kind of middle ground headset. It wasn't too cheap, it wasn't too expensive. It was like 40 bucks or something like that. And I waited like 2 days for it to come, and when it arrived, it actually didn't arrive. A package came and it was this, which is just a cassette tool. So they totally labeled it wrong. It literally is labeled Origin 8 Pro threadless headset. So I called Amazon. They said they're going to send another one. And so 2 days later, I got the same exact thing again. So I just said screw it and went to my local bike shop and picked up this slightly more expensive Cane Creek one, which I'm super happy about in the end. It was pretty freaking expensive though for this build. This bike was literally only like 160 something dollars just for the entire bike itself. So to put such an expensive headset on here is going to be you know, a little wild, but it's definitely never going to need another headset in the future, and you really can't go wrong with Cane Creek. So pretty stoked on that, to say the least. I also got this from Amazon as well. This is just a seat clamp, also from Origin 8, which was what the headset brand was supposed to be. So this seems really nice, and it has like the quick release, so I'll be able to put the seat up and down if I'm going to be like jibbing on the bike or doing anything fun like that. So let's get into putting the rest of this bike together, because now we literally have every single part we need. So let's get to it. That just looks so good. It's just super, super clean. That looks so sick, dude. Oh my god, it's absolutely perfect. I wish I had another black spacer for the top there, but I think it still looks pretty cool. Alright, so now it's time for the part that I'm most excited for, which is putting the handlebars on this. This is really going to kind of give it the personality that, you know, I want to see with this build. So let's see how these handlebars look on this bike. Very, very excited about this. So again, I went with these Fairdale bars, kind of moto style bars. So yeah, this is the moment that I've been waiting for very intently for. So oh, it's gonna look so sick, dude. Absolutely sick. These bars were literally such a good deal. I have a link down in the description if you want to get some of these for your build. But I was looking on eBay and Facebook Marketplace and Amazon, of course, and these were just such a good deal. And the look of them is just awesome, and it's an actual brand too. So that is a well-known brand. So super stoked with these. They look super nice. So I can't wait to sit this thing down on the ground and just see how it looks. So a trick for lining up your handlebars is you kind of want them to be like the same tilt back and forth as the fork. So it's kind of a good place to start. While the bike's in the bike stand, it's kind of hard to tell exactly what they're going to look like. But for now, you always kind of want to line it up with the fork. And then, of course, walk the stem bolts in like an X-shaped pattern. And you want there to be the same gap between all of these little spots here. So just kind of getting it good enough for now so we can take a look at it just to hold them in place. Oh my god, that's so sick. Oh man, it's just coming together now, man. Alright, cool. So let's put the wheel on it and we'll be able to kind of get a better idea of what it looks like on the ground. This thing was really starting to look like a bike, so I wanted to finish it up as soon as possible and get it out for a ride. I really wanted to go with some BMX style pedals for this build, but I didn't have any, so I decided just to put on these extra pedals that I got with my stump jumper. They're nylon pedals and kind of look like BMX pedals, so I figured they would work just fine. Sweet. So unfortunately, I had some issues setting up the brakes. Turns out I bought a 7-speed shifter V-brake combo that wasn't truly compatible with the rear U-brake. There are basically two styles of brake calipers and brake levers for rim brakes, long pull and short pull. Of course, the 7-speed shifter I bought at the Stop Swap and Save ended up having a long pull lever, and the rear brake caliper needed a short pull. Rookie mistake. I actually bought these Death Grip grips for my 5010 and just had them lying around for like 2 years, and they ended up looking so perfect for this bike. I also had some trouble setting up the U-brake calipers. I tried the common sense approach of just putting them on and trying to self-diagnose the problem, but I couldn't get the calipers to spring back to the open position. I spent so much time trying to figure out these brakes that I eventually had to turn to Google for answers. I couldn't find any videos about how to set up these brakes, but I did find an old user manual that had laid out instructions on how to set them up. I followed the instructions to a T and just hoped that it would work. It seemed like the right arm was working perfectly, but the left arm seemed like it was stuck. So I loosened the bolt on the left side and it started to work. Yo, I got them to work. I got the brakes to work, Katie. Hell yeah. I thought they were toast. I thought they were straight up toast. Hey, Mechanical B, what's good? That's crazy. I cannot believe I got these to work. So the trick was definitely having them completely wide open when installing them, so that way the spring locks into the right spot. I was just kind of like, I just had them in. I luckily found like a user manual for these online, and I just followed the directions to a T, and now they work. So super, super cool. The front brake caliper went together without any issues. I got all the brake cable and housing laced up, and then I ran into a little bit of an issue. I only had derailleur cable long enough for a front derailleur, but luckily I had this Jaguar cable just laying around, so I installed that cable through the housing and then adjusted the derailleur. Alright, sick. Before we show you the glamour shots of the GT, could you please do us a solid and hit the subscribe button? In exchange, we promise to do everything in our power to make our videos better and better with every upload. Thank you. I can't believe this build is finally done. It feels like I've been working on this bike forever, so it's super satisfying to know that I can actually take this bike out and ride it now. I've always wanted to build up a vintage bike like this and just go all out, take it down to the frame, polish everything, and just make everything brand new again and basically give a bike new life. So it was super cool getting to do that, and it was also really cool going to the stop, swap, and save. I feel like that's honestly my favorite part of this entire story. So that was super cool, and if you're in the area out in the East Coast, like near Maryland, definitely recommend going and checking that out because that was a super cool experience, and I feel like that is what made this bike so unique and so cool, and a bike that I'll always remember building. So I'm not really sure what the future has in store for this bike. I definitely want to get some new tires for this bike eventually, a couple other things, so I'll be updating that on like YouTube shorts and maybe even making another video potentially. But for now, I'm really happy with this build, and I would love to know your thoughts on it as well. So drop me a comment, and thank you guys so much for watching. You're watching Nick and Katie. Catch you guys next time.